Connecting. Live. Huh. Okay. If this is correct, then this is now live. I have no idea if it's correct. The title that I gave here, which it isn't showing me, was something like Live Sunday Malaysia, the Good Samaritan Rabbi, tying in a number of things, including the reason I turned it on, which is a video that I'll be uploading to YouTube. I would show it to you here if it was possible, but apparently there is no way that I know of to actually share what's on my screen with you. But literally, the last 3 minutes I have spent saving the life of a man who had been beaten on the street. The Good Samaritan story. I know, I waited, by the way. It's interesting. This is very wild how it turned out. I intended to wait if I was going to do any kind of live stream whatsoever. I intended to wait until after the Sabbath, Shabbos, was over for the predominant number of my subscribers who live on the East Coast. They won't get it, though, the Good Samaritan thing. So I guess I have to, tell you the basic story that everybody knows. Although the story everybody knows, I wouldn't say they necessarily get either. The story is Jesus is saying, who is your brother? I guess we should back up a little bit. Let's back up a little bit. The Bible says, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your neighbor as yourself. Doesn't literally mean neighbor, as in someone living next to you. Re'im, your re'ah, means your friend, your colleague, somebody who is part of your community. That's what it means. Everyone who is a b'nei bris, under the same cultural covenant as you all are under. Neighbor or not. So at one point, the rabbis had to explain that, of course, there is also a concept of loy sichonem, do not give things for free. In other words, people who are not within your covenant, who you will do kindness for them, and it will not benefit, it will not ricochet back either for you or for anyone else in your covenant, do not freely give them something, because it won't work. All you're doing is depleting your minimum amount of sympathy upon people who won't care about you and yours. They're not part of the same group. So they said, Re'acha b'mitzvos. This is someone who is your colleague in commandments. In other words, he's committed to following the social contract of the Jewish people. Now, as similarly, very, very similarly, Hillel, a great sage, who said that, famously said many things, one of which was, Da'alach sni, someone tried to convert to Judaism. He asked, Hillel, tell me all of Judaism while I can stand on one leg. We'll get to the exciting part, which is me saving someone's life in a moment. And there's video. So, Da'alach sni, what's hateful unto you, l'chavrach lo savid, don't do to your friend. Zuhi kol Torah kula, that's the entirety of the Torah. Ve'idach, everything else. Perushahu is an explanation of it. All of halacha, all of Jewish law is explaining how that works. Zil Gmor, go study it so you don't fuck up, because it doesn't work simply as a principle. Everyone will think it means something different. Now, things change in society. The way humans work is that there's a new human born every day. Born yesterday. Really, every group that comes to adulthood, every generation thinks that they know best because they see the errors of the previous generation, not realizing the previous generation was responding to errors of the generation before them, and we just never learn anything. That's why we're able to build buildings like this here, in the middle of Malaysia. I mean, not even the middle, like the outskirts of Malaysia, something that's looks like Madison Square Garden, because Madison Square Garden doesn't look that great. It actually does, from the outside, look like Madison Square Garden. Because technologically we learn and learn and learn and we build upon, but socially we're in the mix of it. We're inside of it. We do not learn. We do not learn. So what happened by the time they got to Jesus is Jesus, of course, had to clarify that concept and say, listen, love your neighbor as yourself. Do that. Just love God and love your neighbor. You're good to go, right? Because people were like, what is hateful unto me, do not do unto others. And it was messing with their ability to actually follow through. And the same thing happened. By the way, that ended up finishing with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest and wisest. I've written and spoken about him a lot. Rabbi Akiva, who likely came from a family of people who were followers of Jesus. Rabbi Akiva, who definitely disputed everything that he found among them, but who was an originalist and still was very impressed by the man Jesus himself. He ended up finding a moderate position about the love thy neighbor business. He said that v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ze klal gadol b'Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself. That is the essential rule of the Torah. So he was a little bit less intellectually perfect than Hillel, and he was a little bit less, overwhelmingly, people thinking, hey, you can throw everything else overboard because I got this love thing down, as you see in so many Christian communities today that claim that it's all about love and God is love and whatever else, and you're not necessarily seeing that reflected in the lives. Some yes, some no. So he did a good job. He was a smart guy, Rabbi Akiva. A lot of bad stuff that he ended up causing accidentally, but you'll have to read deep into the inner tracks at our Substack, YDYDY.substack.com. Anyway, but the who is your neighbor brings us to the Good Samaritan story. So the Good Samaritan story is people came to Jesus and said, hey, man, Jesus, our neighbor is somebody who keeps the mitzvahs, right? Keeps the commandments. Well, there's all kinds of people interpreting the commandments in all different kinds of ways. Maybe help us define which groups are out and which groups are in, right? Now, these were Jewish people, but Christians have really made an art form of the thing. Within a few hundred years after Jesus' death, the way that we know about many of the early Christianities is from books of heresies. In other words, of course, they destroyed the actual books of these people, although thankfully we actually dug some of them up in Egypt, the Nag Hammadi and various scrolls of early Egyptian Christians. But they recorded like this is a heresy and that's a heresy. These are all the various heresies. So Jesus kept it simple, of course, because he was a very bright, very great, very clean-hearted man. And he said, well, imagine this. A Kohen passes by, a man's been beaten. He's been robbed. His blood coming out of his ears, his blood on his hands. He's lying on the ground. People pass by and they don't help him. A Kohen passes by. Let's say he doesn't help him. A Levite passes by. Let's say he doesn't help him. Let's say then a Samaritan passes by. Who the Samaritans are, well, I'm a historian. I could take forever to tell you that. Let's just say that in Jesus' day, they had an iffy status. Unlike today, unlike in earliest days, Jesus' day, there was a certain iffy status that this entire, this entire conversation would change drastically if I were to get into that. Suffice it to say, they were people who lived there who were considered kind of Jewish, but whatever, lower status kind of thing. And he says the Samaritan helps him out, blah, 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 blah. Right now, most people miss the entire point of the story. What's he trying to say? Even the very brilliant Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan says, why the Samaritan? Why not a Yisrael? Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. A Kohen, a Levite, and a regular Jew. And Christians, I don't know exactly what they think. I've heard many different people say different things about what exactly is being told here. But to me, it's very evident. I know Jesus personally. I mean, as personal as you can know somebody who died 2,000 years ago. But I really do know the man personally. He's saying, listen, if somebody lives around you and would stop to help you, then they are part of your community. And yes, you should do good for them. You should love them as yourself. You should care about them. They're part of the bank. They're part of the system that you're putting into. You're putting goodness into that system that will repay. Why did he say about the Kohen not helping? Well, because the Kohens mentioned a couple of times. Once when I was referring to an actual Kohen. You can find that piece. I won't give you the precise name, but it's from a couple of months ago. But more relevantly, my piece just a few days ago regarding Lawrence. Again, YDYDY.substack.com. Lawrence, the Jews, the wealthiest, committed, publicly Jewish, publicly religious, not Jewish. Most Jews are not relevant to any of this. It's eating bagels and making stupid jokes as far as they're concerned, but people who are committed to this business. There you have Lawrence, the richest one in 2,000 years. So Lawrence, they took over from the Cohens, the fat Cohens of the Second Temple and First Temple period, constantly cursed by all the prophets. Jesus was right. The Cohen wouldn't help, just like in that video, which is actually on this channel too, also called Lawrence or something like that. It's my face, something like an Israeli flag around it, possibly. I don't know, but it's fairly recent, within the last week. They didn't help me. It astonished me. That's what's astonished me so much, because Jews normally do. Jesus had to jump to the Samaritans, skipping all of the Israelites, because the Cohens, who are eating up all of the sacrifices that people bring because they're so afraid and they're so misunderstanding how to get good with God. And you should watch the video of the Yom Kippur Haftorah called The Word of God, which is the one posted right after the Lawrence video. That the Cohens are just getting fat and corrupt and disgusting, and the Levites are kind of taking their leftovers. They're still benefiting from it as well. And the average Jew would help. The average Jew. That's what shocked me. What surprised me so much. The reason I started making, as I said over there in that video, a funny little video before I stepped into the church, the Latina church. The funny little video about how funny it was that these really rich guys all saw I was Jewish, all saw I was religious, all saw that I was cold and stuck and far from home, and none of them with their, I don't know what the average net worth there is, but presuming the average net worth to be less than 50 million a family is ridiculous. In other words, it's higher, and there are people way, way, way higher. So I was going to make a funny little thing because it surprised me, because I know my mother, my father, of course they would help. Of course they would look out. They're not perfect. They didn't get along with each other. They're divorced. Nobody's perfect. But you see someone alone in a thing, of course you help out. And not just that, but I would say that like Jews today en masse are the most likely to help out a stranger that I have found, at least in America, that I can speak to. The most likely to help out a stranger stranded on the side of the road. Orthodox Jews, again. Orthodox Jews en masse. Can't speak to other ones. Not saying yes, not saying no, but Orthodox Jews en masse. But the Cohens, the Levites, the people of Lawrence, they ain't getting any blood on their fancy clothes. They ain't taking no risks. They don't want their precious little Yingalach to have to see a goy. They ain't taking no risks. But Jesus' point was, of course we know the Jews will help. Yes. But can I remind you that the Samaritans, this lesser people, hi, how are you? I'm talking on a video. Kid said hello to me. Okay. He would also help. That's what it means. Anybody within your society that like is more or less committed to it. Right. So I didn't think I was going to actually turn this on, but I did decide that I wasn't going to turn it on until at least it was after Shabbos had ended for East Coast Jews. And then what ended up happening was I was walking and I saw a man, and I'll upload this video. There's a bit in it I don't love, like where I say that, like, I don't know if the police necessarily are caring, right? Because I'm obviously caring much more than the average person. And certainly the police see it every day, see this kind of thing every day, whatever. They told him to get up. They weren't mean. They didn't kick him. They didn't do anything bad, nothing bad at all. And within a minute he was in their car, but they just didn't want to touch him. That's police all over the world. They deal with a lot of stuff. He's got blood on him. They just don't. They're not rushing to touch him. They're not interested. That's it. That's the sole totality of it, and that represents police everywhere on the fucking globe. Not every policeman, but the vast majority. Nothing wrong. They did everything right. But because I include within there that little thing, I'm a little. I don't know. Maybe I'll only. I don't know. I don't know what I'll upload, but I'll upload if enough of you are interested. So you got to let me know you're interested. Really, you got to let me know you're interested. Otherwise, I won't upload that because whatever. What's the point? What is the point? Yeah, he was lying there. It was clear that he had blood coming out of his ear. He'd obviously been punched really hard in the ear, knocked to the floor, and he had blood on his hands, seemingly from like putting his hands to his ears. In other words, it wasn't knuckle blood. It didn't look like he had been in a fight. And my first presumption on walking over, I turned on the camera. My first presumption was probably like a drunk thing. I didn't intend, of course, to share anything when I turned on the camera. If it would have been a drunk thing, and as I realized what it was, and he talked. He said, "Police," I said, "Okay, yeah, I'm." And I stopped somebody to find out how to call the police and whatever. The guy would have been baking now in the sun. Guy is definitely parched. Oh, this isn't the first or even the 10th time that I've done this, for the record. Not the first or the 10th. And let me tell you something about Jesus. He's dead. And he's not coming back alive. Maybe he will if there is some kind of bringing everyone back alive thing. No reason to think there would be. Doesn't sound logical. Instead, I could tell you my own experience being a Good Samaritan, a good Jew. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit. You're not getting credit for it. You're not getting credit for it. Unless it's a movie where that guy happens to have been, some famous rich guy, and somehow, even in that real situation, I've encountered a situation like that. They usually don't want to help either. Don't want to have anything to do with you. I swear, I could tell you names. They don't want to have anything to do with you. But in the movie, sometimes it works out, if it works out in the immediate. So why do people hate the Jews? Well, the Jews actually are, by most standards, not most standards, but added the stuff up together. Like I said, you're going to find Orthodox Jews helping people more often, relative to the numbers, than you're going to find other people. If you're going to see people getting accidents in America, it's just a thing. It's just reality. But it's my lived experience among many people. But God and I and the world and history expect a lot more from the Jews than just that. We expect at least that they should build a society where people like Jesus do not get crucified. We expect that they should at least build a society where this sort of chesed, this sort of kindness, is not depleted. That everyone's doing kindness. I've lived in communities of people, tiny little, not really communities. I'm saying like 3 people, that are love kindness. What we do there is, if I need a chair and someone else needs a chair, I don't even bring myself a chair. I bring him a chair, and of course he brings me a chair, and it's automatic. We don't have to pre-plan it. It's automatic. I'm happy to bring him a chair. He's happy to bring me a chair. We both end up with chairs. I mean, think about an economy that runs that way. People naturally enjoying doing good for others. We'd have much more than the crap that we have today. Would not hurt our economy to get rid of competition if we have that kind of culture. And that's it. I have to end this now because I don't want to go further. To tell you more, I've told you more on check out my Substack. It's read by every important person. It's read by every important person. Literally 50 Nobel Prize winners, people in the American government whose names you know well, people that you have some respect for anyway in the American government. And also the previous administration, not previous, the Obama administration, other countries, billionaires. Yeah, best we not go further. If you want to know more, it's all there. YDYDY.substack.com. Okay. I have no advice. I can't tell you go out there and be a good Samaritan. Because it doesn't pay. It could get you in trouble. And that's why our world is so fucked up. I could just say that if you want to help change it, you can help change it by helping me. Help get the word out. Help get this video out. Or don't. Don't worry, no one will blame you if you won't. You'll just be one of the millions of people who haven't.